Hey guys, for this section of the video, we are going to be talking about relics, and I want to cover everything from relics, from not only which ones to buy and when, what's good for the style of team comp that you are, the style of team comp that they are, but I also want to give kind of a visual representation of how I think each relic stacks up against each other. So I'm actually going to use a tier list rather than just sit in the God Builder shop. I'm going to use a tier list of all of the upgraded relics. That way you can see, like, yes, Ankh may counter this comp, but Phantom Shell may counter the other comp. And it's like, well, which one am I happier buying? Which one do I think is actually relatively stronger, right? Let's say you're against a Yemoja and you might want Phantom Shell, or you might want, Ankh, but you can only get one or the other. Well, which one do I think is stronger? That's kind of what I want to be able to visually represent here. They have a lot of scenarios, right? They have a lot of hypotheticals. It's how well it works with your character, with your team comp, against their team comp, stage of the game you're in, right? There's a lot of things to consider with relics. So I think the best thing to cover off the bat as we head into the tier list: when do you upgrade your relics? That's a question that I get very often, and there's really no super simple answer. It depends on the relic, right? Let's say something like a Blink. I'm not going to upgrade these relics super quickly, right? Blink just isn't really that valuable to get to the tier 3. Similar to how I was talking about the starter items for support, you're looking for a lot of value out of your resources, out of the gold that you have. So you want a very effective power spike, basically with whatever you're buying from the shop. That's what you want. When I head into a game, normally the way I'm thinking is, okay, what relics do I want in this game? And what first item do I want? Those are the first two things I consider, along with my starter item, of course. And I plan out my build from there. So let's say, you know what? I don't really have anything specific that I want to counter. I think this game will go a little bit later. I'm just going to build Thebes. I will never, ever, ever upgrade my relic before I finish my Thebes. I pretty much will never upgrade my relic before I finish my first item, period. So I'll pick Thebes, Mail Renewal, Mana Core Spike, Spirit Robe, Fey Hoops, Sovereignty, Heartward. My goodness, I'll just keep going on and on. Whatever first item I want, I'm always going to finish my first item on my first back, or aim to do that, and try to get a couple words. I will then think about, okay, well, if I have something like a Blink, I'm just going to head into my second item, unless, let's say I back with 400 gold. Well, that's a great opportunity to upgrade your Blink and get the cooldown lower, and also get a couple wards. I think that's really valuable on Blink when you have something like that. Decreasing the cooldown basically gives you more opportunities throughout the game, right? Every time you blink, you're buying yourself, 20 seconds when you upgrade it. So, if you blink 3 times in the next, few minutes, you have essentially bought yourself another minute off your cooldown. You're getting more and more value throughout the game. Support relics in general, I would say, are basically the strongest thing about the role throughout most of this season. All of the upgraded relics have incredible potency in the right situation if you understand how to use them and when to upgrade them. And it's such like a compounding effect where not only are you getting a much better effect, like if you compare Ankh, you go from just anti-heal to higher anti-heal, and you sunder them, right? If they heal into it, they take more damage. And on top of that, you have an option to reduce shields, right? If you're against a Nike or something like that, a Yemoja, you're also stripping off those shields. You're getting additional effects, and you're lowering the cooldown. So not only are you able to use it more often, but it's way more impactful when you are using it. Let's say you're against something like a Terra. Terra's main strength in her kit is her ult. If you're able to Ankh her every single time she ults, and her team is now getting sundered for that, her ult, in many cases, can actually become a detriment. It can actually hurt her team for her ulting. So when you're able to have those types of interactions, it's completely game-changing. So you really want to be valuing these upgraded relics. In my opinion, most games, I will purposely pick a relic that I think will be very impactful in the early to mid-game fights. Let's say I'm loading into a game, right? I'll take you through my thought process, and I'll give some examples of this a little bit later in the video as well. Let's say I'm loading into a game. I am against a Terra, right? I will pick my starter upgrade. I'll pick the first item that I want for my build. So let's say they don't really have anything that super threatens me. Let's say I really don't think they want to build anti-heal. I'm going to build Benevolence. I'm going to build Mail of Renewal. Well, my first relic now, I can go, okay, well, they have a Terra. I'm going to want Ankh at some point in this game, so I'll just buy it at level 1. So now I'll back on my first back. I'll get my Mail of Renewal, or again, whatever first item you want. And then I'm going to try to contest whatever I can around the map, right? I'm going to try to help my jungler on Scorpions. I'm going to try to get the first rotation of Cups. Normally, after that first rotations of Cups at 6 minutes, I'm then going to back. Normally on that back, you don't have that much gold. You have maybe 1,000 gold. Well, I'd way rather upgrade my Ankh that I know I'm going to use every single time that Terra opts than buy tier 1 of an item. The tier 1 of that item is really not that effective. In my opinion, an easy way to treat relics in your games are if you back and you have the decision between a tier 1 or a tier 2 of an item, or you can fully upgrade a relic that you specifically bought because it's very strong against their comp, upgrade the relic. Always upgrade the relic. I would do that for my first relic every time, and then when it comes to the level 12 relic, again, I'm going to think very similarly. Is this relic important to counter the way their comp wants to play? Is this relic important for how my team wants to play? So, you know, let's say I'm ahead and we want to be doing objectives and baiting them. I might just get a bracer or a frenzy and upgrade it instantly. Or if I really need a phantom shell against their team and now I can finally get it at level 12, I'm going to upgrade it instantly. I want it to be very powerful in those fights. The scenarios where I would choose my own item over the relic is really, really niche. It'd be something like, oh, I really need Magi's against this Daji or this Fenrir who's ulting me off cooldown, and if I have this item, they can't kill me, and then you can actually get more value out of the fight. It'd be stuff like that, but for the most part, upgrade your relics when you can. They are incredibly, incredibly powerful. So now we'll finally get into the tier list, and we'll talk a little bit about each relic, and I'll do my best to kind of consider and kind of tell you when to buy them, when not to buy them, what type of situations I'm looking for in my brain. First up, we'll go through the Aegises. In my opinion, Aegis is the weakest support relic in the game. I think it is so situational to a point that you basically shouldn't consider it if you're looking to basically improve your gameplay and continue learning more and more about the role about the game. So the first Aegis is the movement speed one. It is what gives you movement speed whenever you're taking damage while Aegis. I would consider this to be the worst support relic in the game. It just doesn't generate a bunch of value. It's movement speed only for you. Generally speaking, the reason I don't value Aegis very much as a support is that when you're using it as a defensive tool, let's say you're against a Poseidon that used to be the biggest, like, oh, well, Aegis against Poseidon, that's great. If I can't get Kraken, then they can't kill me. If I waste that in a team fight, you know, that's basically their mage's team fight is just done, right? His whole kit, his whole contribution is done. It's not really the Kraken that's killing you. Like, it can be, but normally what's happening is it's the crowd control chain into the Kraken that's killing you. And if that's the case, you have to start pre-Aegising CC. Let's say you're against like an Athena Poseidon, right? Classic combo. You have to Aegis before the taunt even hits you if you want to immune that Kraken damage. Well, that becomes really telegraphed throughout the game, right? All it takes is them to not cracking you off a taunt one time and to not hard engage the fight, and now all of a sudden your Aegis is wasted, right? Not only that, but the Aegises are a longer cooldown than all these other relics, and again, as we talked about earlier, and I'll continue to reiterate throughout the video, you're looking to generate a lot of value throughout the game for a cheaper cost in support because you are lower farm, you do have less resources than other roles. You want a lot of bang for your buck, so to speak. So to have a longer cooldown relic that is also inherently selfish and is more situational is not really what you're looking for at all. Aegis of Judgment, I think, is at least a little bit better than the movement speed Aegis, just for the fact that it can deal damage, it can be good diving. So let's say you're against something like a Zeus or an Opwash, a character that has no other option but to hard engage a fight, right? If I get on top of a Zeus, I get on top of an Opwash, those characters aren't escaping, right? They're going to drop their kit. They're going to do as much damage as they possibly can. Well, if I have Aegis of Judgment, they're just going to be, you know, killing themselves off of me. Very similar to Thorns, except here, instead of the Thorns, I'm not actually taking damage. So I'm preserving my own HP and also killing them. Those characters, I think Aegis of Judgment can be very powerful against. But again, the downside is that the cooldown is so long. You're spending 800 gold for something that doesn't necessarily help your team. And if you do want to play a more damage-oriented role to kind of, you know, go and dive with your frontliners, with your jungler, with your soul laner, a lot of the time just giving them a horrific effect on the enemy carries or giving them a bracer, giving them a frenzy, or sundering the enemy that you're diving, a lot of the time that is more damage output and more contribution to the team fight than an Aegis of Judgment. So I don't really value either of these relics too highly. I would pretty much advise that you don't buy them. There can be some games where it's good. There can be some games where you put a little bit more power, a little bit more damage into your build, and you can basically solo people with Aegis, but in my opinion, it's not a playstyle that is as strong as some of the other alternatives that you can be going relic-wise, and I think that there's better ways to do that style. So I would consider Aegis to be probably the worst support relic in the game. Next, I'm going to go through the Frenzies and Bracer. I'm going to kind of bunch these three together. The other bracer upgrade is actually not on this tier list. If it was, it would be in D tier, the one that's kind of the roaming vision back and forth. I think it's called Bracer of Illumination. Don't buy it. It's not good, okay? It is not nearly as effective as the other bracer, which I believe is Bracer of Radiance is the name of it. I don't know all the names of these upgrades, guys. I'm gonna just, talk about the effects of them. Sorry about that. The differences between Bracer and Frenzy, I guess, is where I should start, is that Bracer is giving you increased power, and Frenzy is giving you increased damage, okay? And we talked about this a little bit with the War Flag upgrade. You want increased damage, not increased power. The reason for this is, let's say my Hunter has a kin size, okay? If I give my Hunter increased power, their auto attacks will of course hit harder, but their kin size will not hit harder. Let's say their kin's proc is doing 100 damage. It's not scaling off power. Kin's is scaling off the enemy's max health, not off my ADC's power. If I give my ADC increased damage, it actually does scale their kin size proc. So let's say my ADC's auto is hitting for 200 and their kin's is hitting for 100. If I give them 10% increased power, let's say their auto attack is hitting for 220 and now their kin size damage is hitting for 100. So now it's 320 total damage. If I give them 10% increased damage, I'm still giving them the extra 20 damage on their auto, but I'm also making the kin size do 10 more damage. It goes from 100 to 110. It'll actually amplify stuff like Ethereal Staff proc. It'll amplify things like Mana Core Spike, like Glad Shields. It is a lot more applicable, and it scales a lot better, the damage dealt does, and the power is better with full damage characters, right? So it'll be good for your jungler, your mage, your ADC. Increased damage dealt can be good for all 5 characters on your team, including yourself. So for that reason, I actually think Bracer is quite overrated. The reason people like Bracer a lot is because it is a jack-of-all-trades relic. It is something where not only is it giving you a little bit more damage, but it's also giving you vision. It can also give you some movement speed to re-engage or get away from team fights or poke trades, whatever the case may be. Let's say you're ahead and you buy a Bracer at level 12 and you upgrade it and your team wants to start baiting Fire Giants, wants to start baiting Gold Furies. Well, it's really nice to have a Bracer because you're able to now plant on that objective. You're able to have the effect to help you burn those objectives to the point where the enemy team has to walk in, and now instead of you having to use a frenzy to get it to that HP where they feel forced to contest, you just have it on a Bracer that's a persistent effect, and you still have it for the fight, right? So it's able to help you bait objectives more and turn the fight. Well, that's really, really good when you're the team baiting the objective, but when you're not the team baiting the objective, it's not as powerful as just popping a frenzy or popping a horrific or whatever and then hard engaging the fight, which is normally what you have to do on the defensive end. So in my opinion, Bracer is much better when you're ahead and is much better as the team baiting the objective. But if you can't guarantee that's the situation you're going to be in my opinion, it's a little bit less effective. It's more situational in the fact that it has to be on your carries. It also might not apply to your whole team, right? The radius where they have to stand in the Bracer to get the proc, yes, they can move around, but they have to eventually come to that circle, whereas a Frenzy, huge radius, if I pop it, it's very likely I'm hitting all 5 people on my team around a Fire Giant, right? They don't have to come walk back towards me or anything like that. And then the last thing with it is that I really value Bracer highest when I have the Morrigan on my team. I think in most situations, I'm going to put Bracer as a high B tier relic. If I had the Morrigan on my team, I'd put it in A tier easily, maybe even S tier, depending on the situation. The reason for that is the way the Morrigan wants to play just fits so well with a Bracer, right? It gives her kind of a flank option, right? You can put the Bracer wherever your Morrigan wants to stand. So let's say you're at Fire Giant and they want to flank either through mid Harpies or behind Fire Giant. You just put the Bracer in a spot where your Morrigan can use it. It makes them a lot safer because they have more movement speed, right? So their engage range basically goes up. They can stealth from further away, not be heard, and have the movement speed to kind of get in there. If they think it's sketchy, they have movement speed to get away. They don't have to worry about being engaged on as easily. And then the other obvious effect is if they do get a stun on somebody and they have 10% increased power as a full power character, they might actually one-shot a carry off of that, right? So with the Morrigan, I highly recommend getting Bracer. I normally will get Bracer second relic when I have the Morrigan on my team. Normally my first relic will be something like a Shell, Meditation, Sprint, whatever I want. And then I will go Bracer second, and I will upgrade that whenever we are going to be taking 5v5s and I'm going to be near my Morrigan. That's generally how I see Bracer. With the two Frenzies, I'll compare, what is this one? Like Berserker Might, something like that. This is the one where it gives you 40% attack speed and 20% increased damage dealt at the very start, and the effect kind of diminishes as the effect or as the duration continues. So it'll go from 40% attack speed to 35% to 30% to 25%, right? It scales down as the belt is expiring. Most times, if you're going to buy a frenzy, this is the one you will buy. In my opinion, I think it's very effective, but it's very tricky to time it well. It's very much you have to be spot on with your activation of this relic for you to really get value out of it. So let's say you're doing Fire Giant. It's kind of a hard dance of, oh, do I pop it so that we can do more DPS, or do I pop it right as my Mage Ult is about to hit it, right? Let's say I have a Poseidon who's going to Kraken it, or a Ra who's going to ult it, something like that. You kind of want to hit that sweet spot where, yes, you're giving your team more DPS, but also you're making sure you give a lot of secure to it. I think the better application is when you are getting ready to engage a fight. So let's say your soul laner is like a Kukulkan or something and they're blink ulting to start fights. If you can pop your frenzy as soon as they do that, like they blink in, boom, you frenzy. Now suddenly your whole team off that engage, it just makes your hard engage a lot more powerful, right? So now you can do a lot more damage. Maybe you can one-shot somebody off of it. That's really what you're looking for, in my opinion, with this relic. If you're playing the Fire Giant scenario, this relic will be weaker than a Bracer. I would say just because it is less flexible, I will put it behind Bracer a little bit, but I think it is very good. It can be good with a lot of characters. Again, simple scenario is you are trying to hard engage a team fight with a Kukulkan, something like that. You want to pop the Berserker. There's other better options for, let's say I'm an Athena and I could taunt and then, pop my Frenzy. A lot of times I'd rather have a Sunder for that sort of situation because you get 2 charges on it and it's better for poke, whereas the belt of the Berserker is really all or nothing. You're popping that and you either get a kill, you get a great engage, or your relic just kind of feels a lot worse. That's not the case with having 2 charges on a Sunder or having a permanent Bracer, so it's just a lot less flexible. This is the refreshing frenzy. Basically, if you get a kill or an assist, it will refresh the duration of it. The actual damage and attack speed effect is weaker on this frenzy compared to the other one. And the refresh effect only happens once. Again, I think this one is most comparable to Sunder, where you're basically using this as a pick comp, something where you're Athena taunting or Fenrir ulting or Sobek plucking, something like that. It's a single target CC that you're really just using to try to pick the enemy support or something like that. I don't really feel like it's as good at getting you that initial kill, and when you are playing that type of team comp, the biggest thing is to actually kill them off that engage, and I'd rather guarantee that I can do that with some of these other relics. So I'm actually just going to put that Frenzy in C tier for that reason. And I also should be mentioning when I would upgrade all these relics. Both the Aegises, I would, if I do buy Aegis at all, I would pretty much not upgrade this until I'm like literally full build. Aegis of Judgment, I might upgrade whenever I think I'm going to team fight. If I'm against like a Zeus or an Alposh, I would just spend the 800 gold. All 3 of these, I'd want to upgrade it basically as soon as I buy it. Sometimes you can buy these relics at level 1, but in my opinion, they're all very weak compared to other level 1 relic options, so I wouldn't personally suggest that. But yeah, generally speaking, these are level 12 relics to me, specifically level 12 relics that I will buy when my team is ahead. And when that is the case, I will look to upgrade them pretty much instantly. I will normally plan on saying like, hey, I want these relics this game. I'm going to save 800 gold. When I hit level 12, I'm backing, I'm buying it. We're forcing an objective. That's kind of how I see these relics. Both the Blinks, I would say, are relics that I don't value upgrading too highly. I do really value the tier 2 upgrade. Spending the 300 gold for the cooldown, I think, is very impactful. If you think about it, say I'm playing like Sylvanas or Geb, and my Blink ult is really important for our team to be able to engage. If I have to blink out every fight and we want to be taking fights or we want to be able to look for stuff, if I blink 5 times throughout the game and I'm able to decrease this by, 20 seconds, I'm basically buying myself 100 seconds of relic cooldown throughout the game, if that makes sense. It's kind of weird to think about it that way, but it's like compounding value. You're continuously getting more and more out of it. You have a shorter window so that you're able to look for stuff more often, and it just kind of gets better and better and better if those things are going successful, right? If you imagine a world where every single blink Gebal is a kill, then if you're getting a kill 20 seconds quicker, it's just, you just get so much value off of it. So I really do value the blink. Normally I want to be buying blink on gods where I am the playmaker. Kabrakan is a great example, right? I can blink in, I can cause a lot of disruption, I can put people in a really bad spot, and then I'm able to look for opportunities off of that. It lets you push the pace of the game, right? Because you're constantly threatening. If the other team doesn't have their relics, a mage doesn't have beads, an ADC doesn't have beads, that sort of thing, they have to constantly be worried about another person who can blink on top of them and get them killed. So in my opinion, this is a more selfish relic option that you're using to push the pace of the game with your team. So I'm looking to buy this when, one, I'm obviously a character that uses blink well, something like a Kabrakan, like a Geb, something like that. And I'm looking to buy that when it matches what my jungler and my solo laner, what my team wants to do, right? So let's say I have a Poseidon and I have something like a Pele or Fenrir jungle, something like that. Both of those characters want to be fighting in the early to mid game, right? Those characters want to be pushing the pace. They want to be getting involved. They don't want to be AFK farming. That's when I want to buy something like a Blink. When I can work with those characters, I can take fights with them, I can engage for them. Even if I personally don't have like a shell or something to kind of help peel, and you're just 1-for-1ing. If you're 1-for-1ing in those fights, but you're trading your life for their carry, that is perfect. That's what you want to do. You just want to push the pace of the game and get your carries ahead. I'd put both of the blinks. I'd say that this one is an attack speed and movement speed slow. I actually value this upgrade higher in most games. I really like buying this against auto attack heavy comps, obviously. So if they have, let's say they have like a Nemesis, for example, who doesn't have a movement speed, cleanse, no slow immunity, anything like that in the kit, or they have an ADC like an Izanami. If you just blink on them, they almost have to beads this effect, like the slow. Like the slow alone, having a CC on your blink is really impactful, plus whatever you're also going to do when you blink, right? Like, let's say I'm blink Kabrakening them, right? Like not only am I blinking on top of them and stunning or walling them or whatever, but if I'm also slowing them, it's just so much that they have to play around. It's so much added CC threat. And even if they try to turn on you, they're doing less DPS because their attack speed's slow. They're doing less DPS to, my jungler going in with me, whatever like that. So I actually value this pretty highly. I would put it right next to Frenzy Embracer, and then Scorching, I, again, will put it right next to this Blink for now. The reason I don't value Scorching as high is it's a little bit more situational. You kind of have to blink behind them. But when you're the support and you play up, normally people are going to start poking you. They're going to start hitting you. So it's just a little bit more situational when you can actually get this on people. Not to mention both of these relics, I think I put fairly low in terms of the B tier relics just because I don't really like having them when I have Compassion, right? When I have Compassion and my team gets hit or they hit anything, I can't blink anyways, right? So it becomes very difficult to blink. Blink as a relic in general is so fundamental to Smite. If there was no blink in the game, why would you ever want to be a melee character versus a range character, right? Like if they both do the same damage, the range character is at such an advantage, right? Because they can do that damage from a further range. So Blink is inherently giving those melee characters a chance to gap close, a chance to play that engagement up a step, right? They can instantly get on top of you, and then if you have an escape and they have an escape, suddenly they can use that to gap close you, rather than having to use their jump to get in, and then you jump away, and then they're like, oh, guess I'm stuck here and I'm dead. You know what I mean? So Blink is so core to how Smite gets played that it is kind of inherently like important or OP, but I think a lot of these other relic effects, if you can use them correctly, are much, much, much more powerful. And again, it doesn't limit your starter item choice because I really don't want to have to be buying these when I have Compassion. Meditation is a very fun kind of tech option currently. Specifically, this meditation is the cooldown med. They have buffed the knockback med many times. I know people will bring up scenarios with like a Relics, stuff like that. This med is significantly better. One, cooldowns are more important than a knockback, in my opinion. And two, the healing is much higher on this one. Meditation, in my opinion, is the single best early game relic that you can buy. If I buy a meditation, I'm upgrading it like ASAP. Like, if I think their team doesn't want to build anti-heal, let's say I have no healers on my team or anything like that, and I really don't think they want anti-heal, at the very most, I do not think their support is going to start Ankh. That's really the big thing. I really value this meditation very highly. Not only is it giving me a ton of healing in the early game, like, it's also giving you so many cooldowns. Let's say you have something like a Merlin in mid with you. Giving a Merlin more cooldowns is crazy, right? You're giving him a stand switch quicker. You're giving him another flicker in a team fight. You're giving him more damage on top of himself so that when people actually dive him, he can turn, he can kill them. You can basically view it as a damage increase as well, right? Like when I'm fighting with my team, not only am I healing them, but I'm giving them, their escapes quicker. I'm giving them their CC abilities quicker. I'm giving them more damage on top of themselves. Normally, you don't get 100 to 0'd in the early game If you have this meditation, your team is so tanky. It's so hard to take fights. I value this relic very, very highly. I am putting it in either... I'm going to say it's an S tier relic. I'm going to put it in a low S tier relic. I'll talk about some of the things about it. Actually, I'll put it... It's like right between S and A. When they go something like Ankh, if you don't actually proc the Ankh, it's not really that great. So if this relic gets anti-healed, in my opinion, it's not the end of the world, because you're still getting so many cooldowns off of it, right? An Ankh only procs off of ability healing, okay? So off of the God's kits, right? It doesn't proc off of Mail of Renewal. It doesn't proc off of Meditation. Yes, it will reduce the healing, but it won't apply the Sunder effect. The Sunder effect is what you're looking to avoid. So when I'm buying this relic in the early game, I just want to be taking fights. I want to buy my first item. I want to upgrade med. I want to take a bunch of fights. Throughout the game, normally they will build anti-heal and it will be less effective. I like to buy this relic when I have a mage that is something like a Merlin, like a Tiamat, like a Raijin, something that really is spammy, you know, like a spammy mage that wants to constantly dump out their cooldowns for poke, for long range ability damage. Something like an Opwash even, it can be very, very effective with. That's really when I want to buy it. If I have a team comp that's like, let's say I have like a double hunter, like auto attack team comp, and I have like a Kali jungle, I don't care about this that much, right? It's not nearly as effective. But if I have a like spammy mage and I'm something like a Yamoja, this relic is broken, in my opinion. Knockback med, in my opinion, I'm going to put it as a C tier relic. I think it is slightly better than the Refreshing Frenzy. In my opinion, I don't value this relic very highly, mainly because it doesn't heal that much and it will eventually be countered, much like this one. But I just value the cooldowns more than I value. It's like 8 seconds off your cooldowns for this one, by the way. I value that much higher than a knockback. The knockback, in my opinion, it's too situational. Like, if you have an Relics and you think about it in terms of like the combo, like I have to use a knockback and my Relics has to use their ult just to trade beads. We're trading 2 things for 1. We're trading down in cooldowns normally in a team fight, and they kind of have to not engage off of that for me to be able to get value out of that. And I have to spend 800 gold to burn their beads with my Relics that they spent no gold on that beads, right? Like, in my opinion, it's just not worth the resources. It's not very good. Yes, there can be situations where a knockback in a team fight can be huge, but normally if you're playing a support to engage like that, if I'm a blink knockback med character, if that's my engage, why would you pick that when you could just play a character who's good with the blink and then that's your engage, right? Like, if I'm something like a Kabrakan, I don't need more CC for my engage to be good. I'd rather blink horrific them and give effects that they can't beads out of, you know? That's what I want. They can't beads out of the horrific attack speed, slow, and damage reduction. They can't cleanse that effect. I'm looking for that, not a knockback that they could potentially beads and then a relic that basically doesn't do anything. I'm just going to do this really quick. This Ankh, why is this so laggy? This Ankh goes right there, and the other Ankh is going to go down here in D. Hello? That's where I'm putting these relics. The Miasma Ankh, guys, it's bad, okay? It's just bad. The main reason that it's bad is that it doesn't apply the Sunder effect of the Ankh. I believe it's less anti-heal. I think it's 40% instead of 60% on Bladed Ankh. It also, the Sunder effect is like 99 out of 100 times going to end up doing more damage to them, and they don't have to be sat still inside of a Miasma pool for it to do the damage on the Drowned Ankh. It's just worse every time. I can't imagine a scenario where I think this relic is actually better. Literally the only one is at level 5, if you were taking a fight and you full upgraded this relic on something like a Ra heal or a Hell heal or something, and you were playing like an Odin with this Ankh or something like that, and they healed and then you like caged them into it or something. I don't know, like maybe if you can literally keep them still, but that's like just for an early game fight. I'd way rather just have Bladed Ankh throughout the late game and the mid game when I think the game is actually, it's going to get there anyways, and those fights are more important. Just please don't buy Drowned Ankh. It's so much worse. Honestly, I think Aegis of Judgment has more viability to it. I can at least justify building this into like a Zeus or an Opwash or something. I'll be honest, I really can't justify building the Drowned Ankh ever. I think it's just so much worse. Entangling Root Sprint, or what is called Sprout, you know, of course, Sprout. Sprout, I think, was really strong at the start of the year. I think it has since gotten weaker. The main reason for that is roots are now treated as a hard CC, so you will be applying a stack of DR to the enemy team, which not only is making your chain CCs last shorter after that, but also if you've used any CC before you use the Sprute, it's like a 0.4 second root, you know? It's so ineffective. To me, if I'm buying Sprint, it's one of the relics that I actually don't... Oh, also, please, on the Ankhs, like, if you buy Ankh or Med, you should upgrade these ASAP. Both of them, upgrade them ASAP. I'm saying that to transition to Sprute, where I actually don't value upgrading Sprint that highly. If I'm buying Sprint, I'm normally buying it against very slow, heavy comps. I'm buying it against stuff like Cupid, like Ganesha, where I really think it's going to give me a lot of value. It makes those characters feel a lot weaker, right? Ganesha, his main CC, his main threat is his ult. If you're able to sprint your carries out of his ult and he can't, you know, gap close, which he really can't because his 3 is such a short range ability. If you're able to do that, you're able to basically neutralize that kit, right? Same thing with Cupid. If you're able to use a sprint to neutralize his kit, to neutralize his ult, that's a huge deal. It makes it harder for him to burn beads, makes it harder for him to, you know, CC you, etc., etc. I don't really feel like I need the upgrades to do that. I'd rather just treat it like a Blink, where I really value the tier 2. And then once I think I'm getting to the point in the game where the hasten sprint is effective for my ADC and or, you know, my jungler, whoever else in my comp, that's the one I really want to be going for. In my opinion, I put it slightly ahead of this Blink, and Entangling Root Sprint I'm going to put behind both Blinks. That's kind of how I value them. I think I'd put Blink slightly between. The main reason is I would just rather have these Blinks as engage tools rather than the Sprute. And Sprute I don't think is really that effective of a peel. If I want to buy a peel relic, I would much rather have a Horrific or a Shell or something like that. I do value the CC on this meditation higher than the Sprute, but I value the slow immunity and the movement speed way higher on this than I value the healing from this meditation. The healing on it is just really low, and they will anti-heal out of it, and it just becomes really ineffective, in my opinion. Also, when it comes to Sprint, in my opinion, Bracer is just a million times better most of the time, right? Imagine I have like a Kali and an ADC on my team. The hastened effect probably is better than having a Bracer, but if I have something like a Morrigan, she doesn't care about the hasten effect, right? She does care about the movement speed. Normally your mage will always care about the movement speed. Your jungler will always care about the movement speed and the damage, but there might be times where only your ADC actually cares about the hasten effect. In my opinion, I really like relics that I feel like give me a lot of player control. I really want relics that are able to apply and be valuable in a lot of situations. Like Bracer is good against PvP and PvE. Hasten Sprint is really only good when you are chasing the enemy and you need that gap close. In my opinion, it's just more situational, is how I view it. Okay. These Horrifics are very, very, very similar to the Ankhs. In my opinion, this Horrific is literally the best relic in the game. I value it. Maybe Ankh is slightly better. It's one of these two. I actually will say I think Ankh is slightly better in terms of their max effectiveness, but in terms of what you can buy every game, Horrific is way more applicable. I think it's Increasing Peril, something like that is what the name of this Horrific is. It is so broken, guys. It is essentially like, one, this relic is incredibly strong at level 1 in the laning phase, okay? It's like instant wave pressure because you are just slowing them and their attack speed and reducing their damage. So your ADC and you are always going to outclear them because they just do less damage. On top of that, it's kill threat, right? They're slowed. It might be something that they have to beads. If you can burn their beads, and now suddenly you can CC them after that. Or vice versa. Let's say you use your crowd control. Let's say you like use a Horus combo in lane that they have to beads. Well, now after their beads is done, you have another CC that you can use. You can chase them down the lane. It's so good on a hard engage scenario, right? If I get on top of their carries in a team fight and I just pop this Horrific, even if they beads the slow effect of it, they can't cleanse the attack speed slow. They can't cleanse the damage reduction. And if they continue to hit your team, both of those effects get increased. I believe the damage reduction scales from like 15% on the base version of Horrific to the upgrade can be up to 45% damage reduction. You can literally have their damage reduction. And remember, damage reduction is so much more valuable than power reduction. Damage reduction is reducing everything. It's reducing their kin size damage, their soul reaver damage, all of that stuff. It is so broken. It's also a short cooldown relic. I believe it's 110 seconds on the upgrade. You'll pretty much have it every single team fight. It is so flexible in what it can do. You can use it to peel, right? If the enemy jungler, let's say the enemy Pele or something, blink alts on top of my carries. I can pop this Horrific when after she blinks, before she alts and everything. It'll make her do so much less damage. It puts her in a bad spot to where she has to basically beads instantly. It ruins their auto attack, cancels their auto attack chain. It is so broken. It's so good. Learning how to use this Horrific, in my opinion, will make you a better support instantly. It's something that you can use to trade for enemy beads, right? Let's say I use my Horrific and they have to beads it because their escape is down and we can catch them. It just is so flexible. It's so powerful. I love this relic so much. On the other side, the other Horrific isn't like that horrible. Like a Tremble is a fine CC. Please don't buy it. Like, it is so much worse. I actually do think the Miasma Ankh is maybe even better than it. Like, compared to what you could have, it is so awful. There is, in my opinion, 0 situations, literally 0, that I would ever choose this Horrific compared to Increase in Peril. At least with the Miasma Ankh, I can think about like, oh, it actually might be better early game. Never. It's never better. It's so much worse. Shell, in my opinion, I would say both shells are actually in a great spot. Of course, Phantom Shell you only want to buy when you're against a Ymir, a Kabrakan, something like that, a Yemoja, where you really want to be able to get through those walls. In my opinion, I value it as an A-tier relic. I think the shielding on Shell is very good. It's very good at level 1. It's a relic where, yes, I do want to upgrade both of these as soon as I can, but also I'm not unhappy with the base version, right? It's still something that can save my teammates that I can use for a lot of peel. It's also something where if I do back and I have 300 extra gold, similar to Blink, I will just use it to lower the cooldown on it. I think it's worth it on something like a Shell because you can get value out of it every single fight. It's very good for yourself as a defensive tool, right? I don't have to go something like Aegis or something like Beads. If people really do try to go on me or I'm out of position, the Shell might save just myself, and that's fine. If I'm getting like Kraken or something, I can use a Shell and save myself, and then maybe we can pick another fight in a second when they don't have Kraken. That can still be really valuable. Shell's just great. It's a great counter build relic. I think this is Fortifying Shell or something like that is the name of it. This Shell, also very broken, okay? I put it right next to the Horrific. I think it is the second or third best relic in the game. Ankh is, just like I said, more situational. In the situation where you want Ankh, I think it is the most powerful relic in the game. But when Ankh doesn't apply, I would value these other 3 relics as the very 3 best relics in the game. Fortifying Shell, it just does everything, right? It gives a shield. When the shield is popped, it gives your team, reduced damage taken, kind of like the other side of the Horrific. Instead of having their team do less damage, your team takes less damage. Very similar sort of effect, except instead of 45% less damage dealt, it's 15% less damage taken. But it also gives them movement speed. So if they have a team that really needs to stick to you, right? Say a Soul Laner, Blink Alt, like a Kakalin or an Arthur who's chasing down your team, or even a Cthulhu. If they break the shield, the movement speed might actually get your carries out of range to even be hit. In my opinion, I really like to pick relics that I know the impact is going to be very high as soon as I press it. And I feel like Horrific and Ankh are the biggest versions of that. I'd say Phantom Shell is probably third out of all of that. The value is just so obvious instantly. With Shell, it's kind of like a prolonged thing. Like, you get the shield instantly, that's a good bit of value, and then maybe the other effects matter, maybe they don't, right? If you're saving your Shell too late in a fight, let's say your carries are 30-20% HP and then you Shell them and then the Shell gets broken, if they only have 20% HP left to take advantage of the reduced damage taken and the movement speed, you're really not giving them that much of a window. So a big tip that I have with Shell, with Fortifying Shell specifically, don't be picky or stingy when you use it, okay? When you're in a team fight, if their jungler blinks on top of your carry, just pop the damn Shell. Just pop it instantly. You don't need to wait for this, ooh, I might save him, I might bait him scenario. Just pop it. It helps your carry so much. It helps them use their relics better. It helps them make a better judgment of how safe they actually are. When you just Shell right away, you're getting so much value out of the secondary effects of this active, and you are then able to get it on cooldown quicker. You're able to just, kind of play the rest of that team fight the way you want, right? You don't have to sit by your carry and just wait and wait and wait. Maybe you can pop that Shell and you don't have any cooldowns to help them, or maybe you just know that they're safe and then bam, I can go help my frontline diving, that type of thing, right? It's just better to use it early, in my opinion. I would also like to mention both Shell and Meditation. I really highly recommend using these relics in your laning phase for poke. Treat them like a health potion, don't be afraid to use them early. If you're on the first wave and they try to poke you, just pop the relic. Just pop it. Just use it. treat it like an extra health potion. It will give you pressure in the lane if you put it on cooldown. Normally, if you're getting ganked by the jungler anyways, the health would have applied either way, right? If you get the full value out of your shell, it doesn't really matter if you get it when you're at half health when the jungler actually ganks, or when you're at 70% health and then it stops you from going to half health, you know? Like, you're still saving that 20% HP. You might as well just use it, get it on cooldown quicker. Beads, in my opinion, are both, well, chaotic beads I would put as a CT relic. I value it very low C. If I'm comparing beads and Aegis, I actually value the upgrade of Aegis of Judgment higher than I value chaotic beads, but I value the base version of beads higher than I value the base version of Aegis, and I am not looking to upgrade either of those sets of relics very early into the game, if that makes sense. So because of that, I actually am still going to put the beads higher than the Aegises. When it comes to both of these relics, both beads, I actually do really like, if I am buying this, I'm only buying it in situations where I think I am literally the only way for their team comp to play the game. So let's say that they have really bad matchups into everyone else on my team, but maybe they have a Fenrir or a Daji or something like that, or a Morgan Daji combo that's going to constantly look to kill me. One, I'd rather go Magi's. I think both of the Magi's glyphs are incredibly strong right now. I'd much rather be buying those than be buying the beads. Even then, if I think I really need the beads, I'm comfortable spending the 300 gold to decrease the cooldown to let their comp not have as big of a window to actually kill me. And then when it comes to the time where I'm basically done the rest of my build, or, you know, it'll be a situation where I back and I only have 600 gold. Okay, I'll spend the 500 to get temporal beads rather than get a tier 1 item. That's normally the situation I'm going through with upgrading my beads. I will actually value temporal beads pretty highly, honestly. I'm going to value it right next to Sprout. There are situations where I actually think it's better than these relics. Again, it's low here because I value beads as a relic on supports fairly low. But imagine that you are something with generally low cooldowns anyway, something like a Cabrakan. If I can have bead, like let's say I'm playing Cabrakan against Fenrir support or something like that, right? Well, I want blink and beads in that game potentially so that they can't pick me and I get to play the engages the way I want. Well, if I'm able to blink in and use all my stuns and then beads the CC they use to try to peel me off, and then I get my stuns back again, your hard engage becomes so powerful. In my opinion, it's still weaker than if you just go horrific, right? Like, I'd rather blink in, pop my horrific, use my walls, use my CC. If they kill me, they kill me. But I'm going to have done so much in that fight for my teammates. I think it's way better than having the beads. That's kind of just how I view it. I think the cooldown beads are very, very effective when you are something like a Yamoja, for example. You can instantly treat it as if you get a free ability, right? You'll get some Omi back and you basically get another cooldown for free. But again, if I'm playing it that way, I'd rather just go Meditation Cloak and get a ton more cooldowns. And again, I think the Magi's glyphs are so strong that if you do feel like you're going to be CC'd, just go Magi's second item, pick Thebes, Manicore Spike, Renewal, whatever first item you want to go it. Instantly go Magi's. Both the glyphs are very strong for you and your teammates. I think Beads and Aegis are pretty outdated support options, and I would not recommend you buy them on an average game. Moving on, Sunders. This is Siphoning Sunder. This one is, we just call it Blasty Boy. I don't know what it's actually called, but it's Blasty Boy. This is the AoE Sunder. Both of these have been buffed a little bit lately. They are mainly bought as relics that you want to use to get a single target pick. So you want to Sobek Pluck into a Sunder. You want to Kepri Abduct into a Sunder. You want to Athena Taunt into a Sunder. Stuff like that. That's really when I like buying these relics, is single target pick comps that I really want to snowball the game. I basically treat it as Blink for characters that don't need Blink, if that makes sense. Let's say I'm something like a Fenrir or a Serket. I already have so much mobility in my kit. I'm able to find engages and get on top of targets pretty easily anyways. What I really want to have is make sure that the person that I get on top of dies. So I'd like to do stuff like Sunder a tank and then ult them into my team, and now they'll die pretty quickly, right? I'm able to kill them while they're in my mouth. They don't really get to do anything in a team fight, that type of thing. Or I'm able to full Serket combo people and use the Sunder on the tank or whoever I'm, selecting, and then they die off of that. I value both these pretty high. I think I'll put Siphoning Sunder just below the attack speed slow Blink, just because like I said, I really like effects that can't get diminished that easily. If they do have anti-heal, the Siphoning Sunder effect isn't really as powerful. Actually, I'm going to put this even below Scorch Blink as well. If they have anti-heal, I'm not really getting the benefit of this. And on top of that, it's not as much burst damage. It's a channeled true damage effect. So in my opinion, this Sunder is the best Sunder to have at level 5. If I'm going Sunder first, I actually think this is a really underrated relic upgrade in the early game, and you do get 2 charges of it, so it can be really effective if you're a character who can get on top of multiple targets in a team fight. But generally speaking, I'd rather go the AoE Sunder. I like to go both of these when I'm against characters like a Nike is the obvious example, rather than something like an Ankh, right? I basically treat these as, does Ankh affect their team? Like, let's say they have Yamoja and Nike. I don't even feel like I need to buy Sunder. I think I can just wait for the Nike to ult, Ankh the ult, and then also if the Yamoja presses her too throughout that team fight, they're also going to be getting the Sundering effect anyways, right? They're also going to be taking more damage anyways. It also is making it so that you don't need to hit the skill shot. You should hit it anyways. You can hit it off of CC. But like a Nike might happen to jump as you Sunder, and then it's like, damn, now a charge is gone. I'd rather just have the Ankh effect. I guess they could jump that too. But again, it applies to more than just one person. The AoE effect can apply to more than one person, but it depends how stacked they are. I actually do value this still very highly, even though I talked about the downsides of it. Also, I am going to put this Bracer higher. I think this is more accurately how I view them. Again, the AoE Sunder, I think, can be really good. I think it's mainly best against shields, but I think this Ankh is so good that normally I'm going to value that ahead of this Sunder, and I like having these relics. Every single relic in this S tier, I really like buying them at level 1. I don't love buying Sunder at level 1. I think Horrific is more impactful. I think Med is more impactful in early fights. Just generally how I see it. Teleports. I got a drink for this one. Teleports are actually kind of sneaky in support. They really are. It's not awful. It's really not as bad as you would think. It's just that the other relics are so good. If we were in a meta where I felt like there was a lot of action going on and that the map play was actually really fast, I would say the teleport's actually pretty decent for support. If you guys remember earlier in this year, the I forget what the name of it is, but this teleport, whenever you got a kill or an assist, it would reduce the cooldown. If we were in that meta and it didn't get nerfed, I would actually say it's broken, like really broken. The reality is that the pace of the game right now, if you just learn how to back properly and you learn how to time when you're strong on the map, you really shouldn't need teleport to help you. It can be nichely good on something like, say, an Athena, where you can play the map everywhere, right? Like, I can play one side of the map and have my ult threat for the other side of the map, and then I can ult over to help them, and then, oh, well, now they're trying to force a fight where I just ulted from, now I can TP back. Like, it's really fun to play with that, but it's really niche when you actually get value out of it. So I don't rate them very highly. I'd probably put them below Aegis of Judgment, around there. I'd say both of them are around here. Generally, anything in this D tier, I'm basically saying do not buy this relic, is really how I feel about it. I can actually put Aegis of Judgment. No, I'm going to keep. I'll put Aegis of Judgment and Heroic Teleport right here. I think this is more accurate. I would recommend not buying anything in C or D tier. I'll label them at the end. But it can be like a funny, like one-off type of game is how I feel about it. Thorns. Okay, this Thorns is D tier. The reason, this is the one where it steals attack speed and movement speed. The reason I rate this Thorn here is because I think too many things have to be kind of conditional for you to use this. I would only buy this when I personally feel like I will benefit from the attack speed steal. That would be on characters where I'm like an Amaterasu with Animosity in support. That's not really something that I think is very good. And even if I did want to play something like that, I'd rather just have Frenzy or Bracer or Sprint or Horrific. I think is better with that type of playstyle, and I think is less situational. The window on Thorns and the reflect damage is just not very good. It's been nerfed so much. Thorns is generally just very weak. I will put this other Thorns just barely ahead of it. This one is at least higher damage return, so I like it on something like a Kuzumbo. If I was going to play Kuzumbo, I would buy Scorching Blink, and I would buy this Thorns, and I would just hard engage on top of their carries and pop my Thorns and pop my Shelf Spikes, and you actually return like 50% damage or something crazy like that. Outside of that, I wouldn't really recommend buying this stuff, and even then I don't think it's very strong. And the last one is Vision Shard. Is kind of just on this tier list. I didn't make this tier list, I'm just using it. It's kind of on this for fun. Vision Shard, gotta say, fellas, learn to use your Vision Shard, okay? I'll put it here just for some symmetry. Yeah, learn to use your Vision Shard. It's really good if, you know, you go through the first rotation of buff camps through the start of the game, and then you're like, oh, I wonder if we're getting ganked. Put your Vision Shard down. You go, oh, I wonder when their purple is up. Put your vision shard down. Get the timer. You're walking around mid-harpies. Put your vision shard over the wall, over the red wall. Get the timer, you know? Generally, the way I use vision shard, you buy 2 wards or 3 wards if you get a sentry every single time you back. When you have your vision shard, put it down first. The reason you put your vision shard down first is you can only have 2 wards out on the map, right? If I go normal ward, vision shard, normal ward, I'm removing my normal ward off the map, right? I'm losing ward duration. If I go vision shard, normal ward, whenever I put my next ward down in a spot that I want to have persistent vision of, I'm just getting rid of my vision shard. It doesn't matter. The duration on it is only a minute anyway. So I like to use vision shard as a temporary ward. I like to use it to get a buff timer, to check a corner if I think people are trying to gank me, stuff like that. You know, think of all those scenarios where you're like, oh, they might be on this objective, but I don't know. I have to go check the corner. Put the vision shard over the wall really quick. You'll see them, and then you know what they're doing. If they're not on that corner, they're probably on the objective. You get a little bit more clarity. Anyways, guys, that is all the relics. This is like 3 videos in one. I really want to go in depth on this guide though, so hopefully you guys enjoy it and hopefully it's helpful. I'm going to label this tier broken, consider every game. Incredibly strong. Good. Not great. I'll put this is a troll. Bye. You need to rewatch this guide. That's pretty much the tiers right here. Those are the tiers for all of the relics. Broken, considered every game for these. Incredibly strong, good, not great. This is a troll buy. You need to rewatch this guide. The blinks, again, are kind of a cheat code for this. They could go higher just depending on the character that you want to play, but generally, these 4 relics at the top, I think, are game-defining, are meta-defining. Hopefully this was helpful, and I will see you guys in the next section of the video. Boop, boop, boop.